Of it on surveillance video. Watch as a Brooklyn detention officer stood next to an open cell block. You can see a prisoner walk up a set of stairs before getting in the guard's face. More inmates came through the open block. All of a sudden, an inmate started to punch the guard over and over again, even putting him in a chokehold and throwing him down on the ground before throwing even more fists. The officer left lying there, not moving, that towering prisoner walking off.
He was beaten pretty bad. He's still in the hospital.
Begin with that Thanksgiving Day attack at Rikers Island. Exclusive surveillance video obtained by Eyewitness News shows a male correction captain simply walking when a male inmate pounces, punching him in the face and knocking him to the floor. And the assault did not end there. Eyewitness News reporter A.J. Ross has the details.
At what point did the frontline correctional officers lose their control of making their own decisions? Now, if you don't have that problem, then that's a very good thing. But I know many people have said that middle management has become so scared of upper management that they're afraid to allow the officers to make their own decisions. Upper management is so afraid of the politics, they're always on middle management's butt. When did we lose control of maintaining security among the inmates and taking disciplinary action when we need to in order to protect our officers and the inmates? Let's talk about it a little bit. Hi, I'm Gary York, True Prison Stories. Please subscribe if you like this video. You know, every week we see officers being hurt and injured by inmates. And then we hear from officers and they say, well, I was afraid to do this or I was afraid to do that. I think that what has happened is something very similar to the streets. Correct me if I'm wrong. Because of all the politics that are going on these days, officers are hesitating on the street to pull their weapon and fire a shot when an MS-13 gangbanger, murderer, killer tries to kill an officer, for fear of what's going to happen with the agency. Are they going to be under investigation and lose their job? Or fear of going to court and being in court facing a trial because they had to shoot someone in self-defense. Well, take that behind the walls, law enforcement behind the walls, and officers are scared now to grab an inmate. When an inmate raises his hand to and walks towards you in an aggressive manner and is yelling at you, officers are becoming hesitant, and that one hesitant second is the one that gets them caught. So why is all this happening? Well, what happened to all the training that I'm always preaching and many people are always preaching? We need to train more on self-defense. We need to train more on our weapons, because in the corrections field, in the jails and prisons, we do have a lot of incidents where we need our weapon. Out on the perimeter, in the hospitals and escorts and so forth. So, but we don't have enough money for training. It's not in the budget. It's not in the budget. But let's go train you more on report writing so that we can appease the media. Oh, look, see, here's the report, and everything went just exactly the way we wanted it to go. We're spending more time on report writing than saving our lives. And I think we need to get back to the old school. Again, if I'm wrong, you need to correct me. We need to start training more on practical incidents. We need to have scenarios where inmates attack us. I know when I started out, we had to get in the middle of a wrestling mat, and we had a big circle, and somebody was the inmate and somebody was the officer, and we did training scenarios. We did cell extractions. If your agencies are training on cell extractions, please let us know. We need to train on how to remove an inmate safely from a cell so that we don't get hurt, so that the inmate does not get hurt. We need more of this training. And of course we need report writing. Yes, it's very important, because you'll end up in court and your report has to be correct. But let's don't get too carried away with the report writing because we're worried about what the people are going to say on the outside. We have to get back to the disciplinary measures. We're afraid to discipline an inmate. What do the inmates do? I want to talk to the sergeant. I want to talk to the lieutenant. I want to talk to the captain. I want to talk to the colonel. Some of the inmates nowadays are so brazen they want to go straight to the warden. Well, folks, last time I heard, we are the officers in the dorm. We're in charge of that dorm. If I tell you go back to your bunk and this is not going to happen, then that's the way it should be. And we shouldn't have to call the sergeant or lieutenant over because the inmate is crying. Listen, we're not going to abuse inmates. We're going to give the inmates everything they need. Their meals, their medical, their dental, their their blanket to sleep with, their pillow to sleep with. We're not going to abuse the inmates. And I have not talking about that. But we're also not going to bow down to the inmates. When the officers on the floor lose respect and then middle management comes in and overrides your ruling, you just told the inmate, no, he's not going to do that. Now that makes you look bad in front of the inmate and the other inmates. And what are the inmates going to do? They're going to laugh. And every time you tell them to do something, I want to talk to the sergeant, I want to talk to the lieutenant. Now, I know that middle management has to make a decision. And if the decision you made in their eyes is not right, we have to handle this a little differently than in front of the inmate. Okay, inmate, go ahead and take that shower. You can go ahead and do it. You don't do that, middle management. Please, don't be so scared of upper management that you're going to forget about where you came from and where your officers are. Your officers are your lifeline. Your officers are the backbone of the agency. Just like in the military, your soldiers are the backbone. So remember, do the right thing, make the right decision. Back up your officers when they're right, and when they're wrong, take them off to the side and explain to them what to do next time. But don't give the inmates the satisfaction of seeing you overturn something in front of the officer. You made a big mistake. And I know it's tough, middle management, because you got upper management breathing down your back because they used to be on the floor, but they forgot all about what the floor is. They're politics now. They've got to keep the politics. They've got to keep the media happy. They've got to keep the governor happy. The governor appoints a Secretary of Corrections, and so now we've got to keep the governor happy. We've got to keep Secretary of Corrections happy. We have to keep the media happy, but let's don't forget that our officers have to get back the control they need to survive. And until the governors of these states get on the ball and start letting our officers back the back the officers themselves, we have to stop backing the inmates. And excuse me on that last one, that was a Freudian slip. I'm seeing the government backing the inmates more and more, and that's why that slipped out. So I might as well just go ahead and say it. They're backing the inmates almost more than they are the officers, and then you see all these incidents occur, and it just starts to get under my skin that this is happening. The inmates committed a crime. They're there to serve their time. We're not going to abuse them. We're going to give them what they need. But by golly, when they get out of hand, we're going to take control. Officers have lost control, and they need to get the control back. So, with all this talking, what are we going to do? We need to start talking to our middle management. We need to tell them, look, you have got to let us take some sort of control of this dorm and don't micromanage us. Micromanaging us is getting us hurt, is getting us killed. Let us do our job and let us take control and we will get this situation back under control. More and more and more officers every year are being injured or killed, and it's because we on the front line are getting our hands tied by middle management and upper management, and we're losing control. Sorry, middle management and upper management, I know that's not going to make you happy when you see this video. I'm not here to please everybody. I never have been. That's why we call it True Prison Stories. I will offend people from time to time in my videos as well. Sorry about that, but I just call it as I see it. So in this case, I see it as our correctional officers' hands are being tied and they're not being allowed to run the show. If you let the correctional officers run the show, and I'm not talking about running the show by beating inmates, abusing inmates, throwing them in confinement, forgetting about them, but I'm talking about letting them use the tools that are there. And I'm talking to a lot of governors here, because a lot of the governors are against confinement, solitary confinement, whatever you call it in your state. And this is going to hurt us badly, because we need to be able to separate hostile inmates that want to kill other inmates and kill officers, and we need to remove them from the environment. If I'm on the street and a person is breaking into a home to kill someone, I am going to arrest them, I'm going to transport them to the jail, and I'm going to book them in and remove them away from society so they will not harm them. Same concept. An inmate has a shank, he's going to hurt an officer or he's going to hurt another inmate. I'm going to grab him, I'm going to subdue that inmate in any way I have to possible, and I'm going to remove that inmate from the inmate society, and I'm going to separate them and place them in confinement so that they do not harm anyone else. But apparently some of our governors don't want that. Some of our people on the street don't want that. They would rather they just run free and kill people. But what are we going to do? But one thing we can do is don't bow down to it, management. Don't bow down to it. Let's keep fighting. And you folks up at the top, our secretaries of corrections, our regional directors, our wardens, you're the ones that can go to these meetings and try to educate these politicians on what we need to be safe. So don't bow down to them at the steak dinner, the lobster dinner. Don't bow down and have a drink with them and say, okay, if that's what you want. Fight for us. Fight for the officers. All right. Let us know your thoughts. Thank you. Gary York, True Prison Story.